The Watched House. Chapter 1. Settling in. I had always wanted to escape the city's chaos and find peace in a quieter part of town. So when I stumbled upon an ad for a cozy one-bedroom apartment at an affordable price, it was as if fate intervened. As I stepped inside, the wooden floor creaked under my feet, echoing with each step. The walls were painted a warm beige that seemed to absorb the fading sunlight, and the single window framed a view of towering trees that swayed gently in the breeze. My anxiety about this new chapter began to dissipate as I envisioned curling up on those plush cushions by the window, reading into late hours with only the sound of leaves for company. Little did I know, my tranquility would be short-lived. Night brought the unsettling sounds first. An incessant scratching and muffled whispers that echoed through the thin walls. At first, I dismissed them as the quirks of old houses, but as they persisted, dread crept in. I'd wake with a start to find no source, only the hush of darkness outside my window. A chill would sweep down my spine before I told myself it was just the house settling. Then came the eyes. A fleeting glance from the neighbor across the hall, whenever he passed by our shared wall. I never caught his name in our initial exchanges, but the piercing gaze left an unsettling imprint on my skin each time we met. I brushed it off as curiosity. After all, new neighbors were always curious. My days blended into weeks. Work, routine, and nights of hushed unease. One fateful evening, a sudden rap at the door startled me from my thoughts. A knock this loud didn't belong here. I approached cautiously through the dim hallway, peering through the peephole to find an unfamiliar figure in a hooded jacket, their face obscured by shadows. "You must have misplaced something in the common space," they stated gruffly before turning and disappearing into the night, leaving me dazed. There was no common space outside my door, just a shared wall with Mr. Jenkins' apartment. I shrugged it off as miscommunication or a prankster. Yet sleep eluded me that night, as shadows seemed to dance in my room and the scratching intensified, like fingernails on wood. A sense of being watched settled over me. Days passed, my senses straining for any unusual activity. Night fell, casting long shadows. I was flipping through pages when a noise outside caught my attention. The door rattled softly. My heart pounded as I approached it cautiously and pulled it open. Mr. Jenkins stood in his doorway with an unreadable expression. "You all right?" he asked, lowering his head like he'd been watching for me to emerge. A courteous gesture, but something about him seemed off. Eyes too close that set, or a peculiar tilt to his smile. I brushed it off as my imagination fed by the recent strange occurrences. As our brief conversations grew more frequent, those piercing glances became stares, turning into lingering looks that made the hairs on my neck stand. A friendly gesture of freshly baked cookies softened him in my eyes, but I remained vigilant, unsure if he was genuinely kind or merely observing. My days blurred into weeks of settling and working. One afternoon while typing at my desk, a strange object caught my attention. An old doll with porcelain skin, its dress frayed lace, and pale blue eyes seeming to watch me. It didn't belong here. I couldn't remember owning it. My childhood doll, Sophie, popped to mind. Panic set in as I remembered leaving her behind during a recent move. But it was impossible, wasn't it? A chill crept over my skin. The unmistakable scent of lavender wafted from the small, dusty room. As I turned back, the door clicked shut behind me. The room grew colder. Mr. Jenkins had been watching me. I rushed to the door, but he'd returned to his own apartment. Clutching Sophie tightly, I wondered if exhaustion was poisoning my mind. The next day, I found myself staring at a collection of antique books on my bookshelf. Books that were not mine. Inexplicable patterns began weaving into each evening. Shadows flickering outside, a hooded figure glimpsing through the window, and a persistent tapping outside. One night, I awoke to find Sophie sitting beside me in bed, her porcelain eyes wide open. An unearthly whisper echoed in my mind. "They're waiting." As I leapt up, she fell apart like dust under my fingers. In the stillness of the following morning, Jenkins knocked with a tray and an apologetic smile, offering pastries. His curiosity seemed genuine now. Accepting the baked goods as a peace offering, we chatted for the first time in weeks. "You've got a beautiful apartment," he said. I felt a fleeting sense of belonging. As he turned to leave, my gaze fell on his hands. They bore scratches and old scars that looked almost clawed. The image lingered as he retreated into his domain. That evening, as I unpacked the pastries, Sophie lay in pieces on the coffee table. My heart raced. It wasn't a doll at all. Remnants of my childhood memories, shredded by time. A cold draft whispered secrets against my skin before the door creaked open and slammed shut. Jenkins sat crossed-legged outside my door, illuminated only by his faint light. "Strange occurrences?" he murmured, as though I'd voiced the thought aloud. My hand trembled as it reached for the doorknob. He gestured to a chair in front of him, inviting me over. "Please." My legs carried me toward him like an automaton, while my mind protested vehemently. In his dimly lit living room, he spoke about children lost and forgotten things. Whispers from other realms, watching eyes, and the shadows that danced beyond our walls. The words seemed to seep from nightmares. His tale spun a dark web in this peaceful apartment. I sensed he was speaking of his past obsessions rather than facts. It was just my paranoia, fed by loneliness. As I prepared for bed, Jenkins knocked on my door once more and handed me Sophie, an act that filled me with dread and gratitude. The scratching continued long after midnight. In the eerie quiet before dawn, I fell asleep to the unmistakable scent of lavender. Chapter 2. Discomforting Patterns. Each day felt like a ritual of uncertainty. Every night brought new disturbances. Shadows crawling up the window frame, tapping on my door, and an unearthly presence lingering in every corner. My dreams became a canvas for what I feared most. Being watched by unseen entities. The air held secrets as thick as the scent of lavender now wafting from Sophie's presence. One evening, while sorting books, the closet doors swung open to a hidden compartment. A book slipped off the shelf and landed beside it with an unnatural thud. As I reached for it, claws emerged from the binding. Jenkins was there in his worn armchair, watching. Your memories come alive. The room felt smaller. Something had been inside my wall since moving in. On a whim, I rummaged through Sophie's gown. A note slipped out. "They await you in the common space." I found a small key tucked with it, a riddle that only he could decipher. Find where echoes meet silence. The door creaked. Mr. Jenkins waited beside the shared wall between our apartments. Our eyes met as he handed me the key and a tome bound in worn leather. His smile twisted into something unsettling before the lock clicked open. Dust danced within, revealing an empty space lined with more of his dark tales. An old, ornate box held a photograph. A girl in an ivory dress among whispering shadows. The image seared itself into memory as Jenkins whispered, "They wait," echoing from both our spaces. He returned the book and Sophie, eyes gleaming. Shadows danced at my feet. I'd never seen them so vibrant before. A muffled cry echoed through both our apartments. An infant's wail. Unspoken dread hung in the air. The common space was empty when he opened his door once more. A girl no older than 10 crouched there, fingers stained with dirt and eyes dark as coal. Echoes meet silence. He leaned in close. This isn't over. Chapter 3. The Uninvited. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by unseen forces. Jenkins had been observing me for far too long. Every night brought new whispers that echoed through our apartments. One fateful evening, I stumbled upon a hidden door. Behind Sophie's closet, an eerie wind brushed my neck as I descended into an underground room filled with whispering children and the scent of lavender. In the center stood an ivory dress, on a mannequin once worn by the girl in the photograph. A voice whispered, "They're waiting." I turned to flee. Mr. Jenkins followed from the shadows behind us. Children's laughter turned into wails as they descended the stone stairs, leading to our door. I couldn't breathe. Sophie lay broken on the floor, a relic of forgotten things. The children halted at his feet, eyes wide and unblinking, before vanishing in a whirlwind of fabric that enveloped us both. His gaze was no longer curious, but intent as he beckoned me closer. I'd entered his world without realizing it. Our walls were now shared spaces. In a room filled with forgotten children's clothes, whispers became words. Help her find them. A manila folder held sketches of girls in the same ivory dress. Follow them, he murmured and vanished. I clutched Sophie to my chest as I followed an unknown trail of whispers through the labyrinthine rooms behind our walls. Jenkins trailed close, watching me with a knowing gaze. The children stopped at the door, once locked but now open, revealing my childhood room. There, amidst my bed sheets, was a photograph. Another forgotten child in the same dress, eyes blacker than coal. They're waiting. In her hand lay a key, buried among the tatters of my memories. A shadow from our rooms crept toward me on tiptoes, embracing me with an unnatural presence. An invisible force pushed me down into my childhood bed as it unfolded into a room of forgotten things. "I've seen this before," Jenkins whispered in the corner, eyes glowing like lanterns in darkness. "You're not alone." Shadows from both our apartments gathered around us, forming a living darkness. Unspoken truths swirled and danced. I recognized the girl now. My sister had worn that dress long ago. In the center of an endless night of memories, Jenkins stood over me, his eyes aglow as if watching something beyond the veil between worlds. The forgotten are waiting. The room pulsed with echoes that turned into a chorus. Children's laughter and wails intertwined with whispers only darkness could carry. Sophie lay beside us, her porcelain skin cracked open like an offering. In this space, that time continuum, Jenkins whispered secrets, leading me through a child's memories and the darkness beyond. A presence awakened as we shared tales of forgotten things. He vanished into blackness. I was left in his embrace. In the days that followed, whispers turned to children's laughter, echoes of life and death within our rooms. As I explored these hidden spaces, Jenkins spoke about watching, being watched, and secrets buried deep. My memories unfolded like a book he penned for me alone. Each night, darkness gathered, an unspoken promise echoing in my chest, while Sophie felt lighter with each passing evening. The manila folder revealed a pattern. Girls all bearing that dress, their paths intertwined by shadowed hands. He spoke of the abyss where forgotten things awaited and how I'd found them. They needed me as much as they feared me. In every hidden room was another child, trapped for years like an offering in fabric and time, watching through their eyes alone. Until the night I understood their calling, to find my sister who had long been lost. A door closed behind us with a click. It was now our world, interwoven between lives that shared secrets on both sides of reality. Jenkins vanished into shadows. They spoke in tongues only known by forgotten things. In this shared space, that time continuum, echoes and darkness mingled with the whispers of children's laughter as I searched for what was lost. Shadows danced and spun out of control. A forgotten thing called my name. Elise. The manila folder contained sketches of girls who'd found their own paths into light. We walked between worlds now, in the heart of shadowed things, our tales entwined like the fabric they wore. And I knew that on this shared path to an abyss, we'd face the forgotten together, two souls bound by what echoed through both our lives.